Hi, this is Adish from Informatica IR support. Today I'm going to take you through demo on how to connect to different IR servers running on different physical machine remotely from the same client installation. So the agenda for the video is how to connect to different IR servers running remotely using the same client installation. So I'm going to take you through a demo on this. So this is my client installation that I have done on a that is located under C Informatica IR. So when you install a client, you would see different folders like bin, docs, env. So we have to configure certain env files to connect to the remote IR servers. So by default you will get issc.bat, envc.bat and nm3c.bat. So all the batch files that ends with C are the client side. So you need to configure this file so that you will be able to connect to the remote IR servers. So by default you will get this. So when we I have two different servers running. Let me show you that. So first IR server instance is running on the IP address 10.75.41.114, and for which ISSS file is configured like this, where it is using 2666 folder and 2666 port. For the connection it is using 2667 and all and so on. And for the nm3s, that is, it is used for configuring the name3 server. So it is configured as 2665. That means the name3 server will listen on the port 2665. And also we have configured envs, where we have configured the license server port. So this is the first IR server instance that is running on this particular IP address. Now let me take you through the second IR server instance. So this is the second IR server instance that is running, which is on IP address 10.75.42.137. So again, for this server instance also, IEEE has been configured, and search server will listen on the port 1666. Connection will listen on 1667, rule base 1668, and one console will listen on 1669. Similarly, name3 server will listen on 1665 and envs. Similarly, license server port we have configured here. Now I'm going to take, so these are the two different IR servers running on different machine. Now I'm going to go to IR client installation, which I have done, so that we will connect from the same client installation. We will connect to these two different IR server instance. So if you see here, by default you will get ISSC, envc and nm3c.bat. So this you need to configure it so that you should be able to connect to the remote IR server running. So I will show you what we need to configure, what variables we need to set, so that we will be able to successfully connect to remote server. So first we'll see that for connecting to remote IR server, we need to give the IP address. That is the this issc.bat I am configuring to connect to first IR server instance. So this is the IP address of the machine. Then I need to configure the port of the search server. So you need to go there and see in ISSS what port you have given for this particular IR server instance, and you need to provide it that. And similarly for this AC host, you need to provide this. For the connection server, you need to provide the port, IP address, colon port, and then rule based port. And similarly for the console server, you need to define. So whatever the servers that you have configured in ISSS, you need to look at there, and you need to configure it here as well, so that you will be able to connect to the remote server. Now let's see how I have configured envc.bat. So here in this particular file, I need to configure license server host and port I need to give. This is necessary because it will try to connect to it will use this particular port. Now apart from that, in issc.bat I need to give the SSA work dir, and this SSA work dir, I need to give the valid path which exists on the server side of this particular physical of this machine, so which exists there, so that all the temporary files which are getting generated will get stored here. Now to connect to name3 server, we need to configure this nm3c.bat. So again, you need to give the IP address of the name3 server where the name3 server is running. You need to give the port, and also name3 host you need to provide. Now this is, so by default, you if you look at here, by default you will get only issc.bat, envc.bat, envs.bat, nm3.bat, nm3c.bat. So to connect to IR servers, we configure issc.bat. To configure to connect to name3 server, we connect to nm3c.bat, and for the license server, we configure here. Now let's say I want to connect from here itself to some other IR environment, for which I have showed you the IP address, the second IR server which is running on some different machine. So we can connect it from the same client installation. What we need to do is we can copy this file, and we can, let's say that is a UAT environment where the IR server is running, other IR server is running. So we can copy that issc.bat, and we need to and we can rename it as issc_uat.bat. Now we need to configure this particular file so that we should be able to connect to the other IR server. So if you see here, I have given the host name of the other server which is running remotely, and similarly the search server. So if you see here, my search server on the other machine is running on the port 2666. You can look at the ISSS file there, and you can configure it here similarly. Now similarly, SSA work there, I need to give the valid path which exists on the server side, so that it will store temporary files there. And similarly, console server, rule based server. Now similarly, I have copied nm3c.bat, and I have renamed it to nm3c_uat.bat. Now I need to give it. Now before looking at this file, let's go to envc_uat. So I have also configured envc_uat.bat. So I have copied this. I have renamed it as envc_uat.bat, so that we'll be able to recognize that we need to connect to UAT environment. Now if you see here, I have configured the license server host port and host colon port. So we need to give the IP address of the other server of the machine where the other IR server instance is running. Now if we see here, in the original script we are calling envc.bat, but since we have renamed it, so from here, instead of calling envc.bat, we need to call it envc_uat.bat, because from here we will be connecting to, because here in the envc_uat.bat we have configured the license server host and port of the of this particular IR server machine. Okay, so similarly, if you see in envc_uat.bat, we need to call it here uat.bat. Similarly, as we have configured the license server host and port of the other machine, other IR server machine in this particular file. Similarly, n3c.bat I have configured, and that's okay. Now let's, by default, if we want to connect to console client, if you want to connect to the first server, IR server running on the running on one machine, that is on the IP address 10.75.42.137, will be using this default IDS-conf, because it will be calling ISSC file. So if you see here in ISSC, we have configured the let's first IR server machine host and port. So we'll be I'm going to take you through the demo on this, that if we connect this, it will connect to the first IR server. Now similarly, Similarly, I have copied this file. This file is present in the bin directory of the IR installation, IR client installation. Let me show you. So if you see here, this will be the default, by default that will be present. Now if you open that file, we have configured it here issc.bat, so it will set all the environment variables. So when we are going to run this particular batch file in admin mode, it is going to connect to the first server, because it is going to set all these environment variables. So I have copied this idsconf and I have renamed it as idsconf_uat.bat. Now this file I will use to connect to the console, using to connect to the other IR server to open the console client. So instead of issc, by default it will be issc.bat, so we need to rename it to issc_uat.bat to connect to the remote server, to connect to the other IR server machine, which is running on the port host 10.75.40.114. So similarly for POM also we can copy it. It is also present in the bin directory, and we can rename it, and here by default it will be nm3c.bat, so that it will POM will connect to an m3 server running on this machine, and it will be able to see the population file that are installed on this machine. So we copied it, we renamed it. So instead of nm3c, we need to call it nm3c_uat.bat, so that it will connect to this particular name3 server running on this particular host, on this particular port. So similarly for the workbench also we can define like this. So we have to call it, by default it will be nm3c.uat_uat.bat. So by default it will be nm3c.bat, so we need to define it here as nm3c_uat.bat. Now I'll start the console client and maybe a workbench to see whether everything is working properly. Now let's say if I want to connect to the if I want to open the console client to connect to the IR servers running on the second machine, which is on the IP address 114. So we have configured is like uat.bat, so I can give it as -a, and let's I have gone to the bin directory of the client installation. Now I'm going to connect to the UAT using the file that we have configured for UAT environment, which is running on other IR server. So idsconf_uat-a to open the console client in admin mode, so that it will connect to the other IR server. Okay. So mdm re952 mdm now I'll press OK. So we have logged into the using the console client and connected to the IR server running on the machine 114. Now similarly I'll connect to the normal one. Let's say POM, I'll connect to UAT environment POM. Now this will open, so we will be able to connect to the name3 server, and we'll be able to see the populations on this particular server instance. So similarly we can open the workbench. If you want to open the workbench of UAT, we'll use the POM_UAT, and if we want to connect to the first IR server, we'll use the normal POM. So similarly you can define, let's say you have prod environment, so you can copy that envc file, issc file, and the nm3c file, and you can rename it as _prod, and you can configure it accordingly and call that particular script from the issc file. And similarly you need to configure this particular files and call the prod script from that file. So that was the demo from my side on how to connect to different IR servers running on different machines remotely from the same client installation. We'd love to hear from you on supportvideos@informatica.com and twitter.com/informatica support. Thank you.